Namaskar, Jai Hind, Jai Bharat, and welcome to Dev Talks. This is Aadi Achint. I have with me Mr. Kanwal, one of the most renowned voices in India as far as foreign policy is concerned. There are loads of renowned voices, but this is a voice of reason, and that's why I like interacting with him. Sir, Namaskar, thank you so much.
My
Welcome to the
pleasure.
show. Sir, I want to ask you about diplomacy. How do you think India is playing this whole Pahalgam attack going across to the world? Because there's been a lot of diplomacy happening since yesterday, a lot of phone calls, a lot of meetings. What's the baseline for this, sir? What are we trying to do?
First of all, I would say that government has proceeded very well, very thoughtfully, maturely, and have, in the first instance, chosen diplomatic options. And these are not empty diplomatic options. The most important being the suspension of the Indus Waters Treaty. Now, of course, people will say that this doesn't impose immediate costs on Pakistan, and we are looking at some immediate costs. But that may be a valid viewpoint in view of the enormity of what these fellows did in Pahalgam. But nevertheless, there is a tactical approach and there is a strategic approach. And the Indus water suspension is a strategic approach, where you will now go forward and build your power plants and the future ones as you wish, taking into account the latest technology uh, and not be bound by 60s and 70s technology. Because Pakistan has succeeded because of treaty obligations we have in delaying our projects, which means therefore enhanced costs. In some cases, in Bagliar and others, we've had to redesign the project. Uh, in fact, one of the neutral experts was one of the persons that said that there's now new technology with regard to ponding and sluice gates, and therefore India is right in adopting this new technology, but the Pakistanis insisted that this would not be permitted, and then we had to go back to old technologies. Now, these are the things we can do, and build and announce additional uh, power plants on these rivers, the three rivers, and of course send a message that we're not going to consult the Pakistani, we're not going to consult you anymore. And then there is this pending thing about our right to withdraw 1 million acre feet of water from these rivers for irrigation. Uh, uh, so not for consumption purposes, for irrigation. We've not done that. We can do that too. As it is, if you recall, I forget the exact dates in 2010 and 2018, 19, when there was in the first case it was Hafiz Saeed who said that we're going to launch a water jihad against India, and when in 2018, 19 there was a diminution of flows in the Indus because of climate change issues and everything else, they started blaming India for stopping water. Uh, and then, of course, next year or whenever Pakistan was flooded, three-fourths, two-thirds of Pakistan was flooded with water, and that sort of took that sort of exposed the the stupidity of their claims that we had been deliberately blocking the flow of water. What I mean is, this is a very sensitive political issue, and if Pakistan loses control over Indian actions, that has long-term, medium, long-term implications. With regard to other things, closing the border, no trade, this and that. In any case, the trade was very little. Importantly, we have annulled the posts, annulled, not simply asked these defense attaches of Pakistan to go back, but we have annulled these posts. Uh, and we are withdrawing our own people. That's a very good step, and it'll take a long time for this decision to be reversed. Reducing, and I was involved in this business when I was foreign secretary, about how much you can reduce the number of people in our respective missions without making the working of the mission impossible. And hence, this 50 was considered a number which would allow the two missions to work at minimum levels. Now we've reduced it to 30, which effectively means that the mission won't be able to function, because this includes your local staff and including what you call class 4, you know, drivers and gardeners and stuff like that because we don't employ locals because of these fellows being connected to intelligence agencies and the security reasons. That's a good step. That's a good step. And then revoking visas and all that. Okay, that's important, but I don't think it is terribly material in its consequences on the ground. It's not as if there's such a large number of Pakistanis who've been coming to India. What this, of course, means is that all that stuff about people from this side going there, people from the other side coming here because they are divided families and this and that. So that sort of a thing will stop, and it will put pressure on those people who have relations on both sides. So that also is an important step to send a message to Pakistan. Now the question is this enough? Is this sufficient? Will it satisfy public opinion? Do we want to consider kinetic options? What could be those options? How realistic they could be? Can we control escalation? One view can be, personally, I would say that this is feasible, doable, and would be consistent with what we are doing, is to actually abrogate this ceasefire agreement. But why have this ceasefire agreement? I mean, when Pakistan launches these kind of horrendous terrorist attacks with a clear-cut objective of, you know, destabilizing Kashmir and seeing if they can undo the results of progressive normalization that has occurred, then what's the virtue in having a ceasefire? Simply because a ceasefire also protects nationals on our side on the border. Their lives are better protected, etc., etc. But then this is a price that you have to pay. Therefore, I would say that you can get rid of this ceasefire business. Plus, you can make some military movements, substantive military movements, to force the Pakistanis to mirror those movements on their side, which means withdraw people from the western border where they are under attack by the Taliban, Pakistani Taliban, and the Balochistan Liberation Front, as well as the Afghan Taliban. That could another be a point. That could be another point of pressure. There's another thing that we can do now that the Pakistan. I don't know if what the ins and outs of this are, but it looks attractive. Pakistan has closed Indian airspace to Indian carriers. Now, what we can do in return is to say that no carrier will be allowed to land in India, any carrier, which actually enters India through Pakistani airspace, which would be a huge blow to international carriers. And will also deprive the wretched Pakistanis of whatever earnings they get from overflight and stuff like that. This is something we can do and generate. And then finally, reactivate the FATF. It's very clear that terrorism being supported by these fellows. And something which we could have done, we should have done, but somehow we are unable to do this, is to declare Pakistan a terror state. After all, we've been saying that past to the Americans, why don't you declare Pakistan a terror state and this and that? And the answer has been, why don't you do it yourself in the first instance? Now, of course, declaring it a terrorist state would mean that you have then to break diplomatic relations entirely. You can't have diplomatic relations with a state you've declared as a terrorist state. But depending on how these things develop, what Pakistan's reaction is, this is an option that could also be kept on the table for implementation if and when becomes necessary. But for that, you need to have a law, legislation in your country, like the Americans have. Whether there's enough internal consensus on this, I don't know, because there are lobbies, there are voices there are NGOs. This is the great weakness of our society. We still want to talk peace and stuff like that. So there are elements in some of our states in particular. I don't want to mention those states, which which have powerful lobbies who think along these. So there it is.